excited to have a panel where we can talk about leveraging the power of employees with a sustainability mindset. I have some amazing guests today, and I would like you all to introduce yourselves, maybe starting with you, Peter. If you can introduce yourself, tell us where you come from, and give us a sense of what does it people sustainability mean to you?
Oh, okay. Let me start with the first one, or with the last one first. What does people sustainability mean? I think it's the responsibility of a company, of individuals, of leaders, to ensure that people working for us and collaborating with us maintain their mental, but as well their physical health, that they can keep their energy and that we are not burning them as a person in that sense. So sustainability is something that people can go on over a longer time. Peter Ziswiler, my name. I am responsible for HR at Georg Fischer, which is a Swiss industrial organization operating globally. We are particularly in business for water and gas transportation and distribution, as well as for lightweighting parts on cars in particular, and for tooling in high precision tooling machines, to be very brief. Yeah, operating globally, as I said, and have the main headquarters here in Switzerland.
Fantastic. All right, Angela.
Yeah, so I'm Angela Hultberg. I'm the Global Sustainability Director at Kearney Management Consulting. We're a global firm too. We operate in 40 different countries. So I'll give two answers baked in one, right? Because I am a sustainability director, when I think about sustainability, I of course think about climate, about people, biodiversity, nature. And for me, people sustainability is the fact that if we're going to fix it and fix the mess we're in, we need people to fix it, right? It's not going to magically fix itself. It's not going to be a technology that comes saves it. We as people have to do it, both as individuals and as people working in businesses and using what we do every day to have impact on the world. But exactly what you say too, to have people do that and to be able to do that, you need to have a sustainable workplace and a sustainable career where you can thrive and grow and enjoy for many, many years.
Excellent. All right, Philippe, what else do you want to add to that?
Hi everyone, I'm Philippe. I'm responsible for HR strategies and also for marketing at the HR campus. I'm also part of the board. And we're a Swiss-based company focusing on basically on making people happier. And we mainly do that through excellent HR processes, through digitalization. And there are various tools basically that we see to make it happen. And people sustainability for me basically means just making people happy and achieving great things together. Obviously that's easier than done than said than done, sorry. But yeah, I think that's in short what it is to me.
I love it. So bringing together people with your sustainability goals and really thinking about how to do that for the long term. So Philip, I'm going to stay with you with our first question. And that really is the role of corporate culture in thinking about a sustainable people strategy. So can you maybe give us some thoughts about corporate culture? What does purpose have to do with that? And how do you help people thrive in that?
Maybe we start with the notion of culture. So for me, culture is basically the collection, or corporate culture is the collection of the values of all the individuals in a company, and manifests in all the little things that people do. So whether you leave a clean table or a clean kitchen for the next person, whether you call another person when he or she falls sick, it's all these things. And obviously it matters a lot in terms of sustainability as well. And I would like to tell an example that is a bit outside of the corporate world. And there's a little place here called St. Antonio. It's not far from here, from Davos, like 30 minutes. And we basically focus on digitalization and making people happier as a company. And a couple of years ago, we started to take our clients up there and do workshops with them, dream with them about the future, etc. And for that, we run a little hotel up there. And during the pandemic, we had to basically close the hotel, or communicated that we closed the hotel because so many people fell sick. They left for all kinds of reasons. And I communicated that in the village, and the people told me, you can't do it. You can't close the hotel. the ski lift is dependent on it, the ski schools are dependent, or the restaurants are dependent on it. You can't do it. And what did they do? They said they run the hotel for us. So people so retired farmers, a person with another restaurant, they said they run the hotel for us. And I was skeptical at the beginning, but we found a way. And at the end, the amazing thing was it was one of the best seasons that we had. It was a fantastic experience. It was great for the whole village. The ski school was operating and everything. So it was really nice. And why is this relevant in this context? So what basically made this possible was the culture, and St. Quintinian has a very special culture. So it's a valley that is really forged by avalanches, if you want. So the village was destroyed 2 times by avalanches. You can't get out of there even sometimes in winter. So there's a very strong sense of community, people helping each other. And so that was the first point. And the other point there was that people really took responsibility. So they knew exactly that they had to do something. They knew that there will be issues for other people. No, they didn't think the neighbor will do it. They took responsibility themselves. And the third point was, basically that there was a huge sense of urgency, that there was a purpose. You know, you didn't have to explain a purpose of why you do that. Everyone knew you had to do it, right? And if you bring this thought to a corporate world, right, that you have a strong community, people take responsibility, you enable them to take responsibility. And if they know why, they have a purpose, there's a sense of urgency, I think you can achieve great things also with regard to sustainability.
I love that, because you just showed that how the community is so integral, both the community, the physical community, but also the overall community within your organization. Angela, you talk a lot about passion and pursuing that through work and personal development. And I'm just curious, how do you see this concept of connection and people to bringing out potential in what you do? I
mean, we spend so much time at work, right? So if you're not enjoying it, that's going to be a horrible situation, honestly. So I also had, like, one of my mentors I had when I was starting out once told me that you should whistle on your way to work, not on your way from work. And that's how you know, right? If you're like whistling because you're so relieved not to be there, go find another job. And I really took that to heart, and I've carried it with me since then. Now, I'm in a very fortunate position because I work with sustainability, and sustainability is what gives me purpose when I feel like, you know, I've actually had some impact. I'm actually doing something that the planet became a little bit better today, and I had something to do with it. You know, it brings me a lot of joy and purpose. And so it feels almost like cheating, you know, that it's so easy. And of course, for the people I work with, they bring that same energy. I can't tell you how many of our consultants in the firm, especially the younger one, like really, you know, always grabbing me, I want to do more of this, I'd like to do more of that. And the question I put to any room when I go out and I try to talk to clients, internally, it doesn't matter. And I usually say, if you are under 30, raise your hand if you would ever consider working for a company where you did not have sustainability impact. So far, nobody has raised their hand, not a single person, because this is a priority for them. And you know, these are smart, talented, ambitious young people who know they can have a positive impact. And of course, they expect their employer to give them the opportunity to have that impact. So I think working with sustainability, you sort of almost get the purpose for free. The flip side of that, I will say, that is almost like the burden of purpose. Sustainability professionals are often, almost always, identify as high risk, right? Because at some point it can get hard to separate what you're doing and the responsibility. You know, I've had colleagues burn out, like you say, because, you know, they go on vacation and there's a heat wave and they see dead birds on the ground because they're not water. And their first thought is, oh, this project I'm doing, we must deliver. Directly connecting dead birds on the ground with what they do every day. And that type of pressure, if you have the weight of climate change on your shoulders, has a lot of pressure. So there's a fine line there. But I think working within sustainability, environmental, social, it doesn't matter, it's so gratifying, and you get to do something that matters every single day.
I'm sure you want to add, Peter.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Why does it only matter for people below 30?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
I actually do have a theory about this.
I think it matters for everyone. And I think, and it brings joy and purpose to everyone. I think the difference is they would never consider taking the job. I know I have friends, they would consider taking a job. There would be other things. There would be great work-life balance. There would be, I don't know, a high salary. They got to work with companies they really loved, etc.
I understand that.
But that for them is an absolute game changer.
For me, it applies as well for people above 30.
And I'm super happy to, well, I mean, I left 30 a long time ago, so agreed, but I'm happy to hear
I
that.
think the difference in having looked at work and the relationship of work for a long time, I really do think the difference is that when most people of my age, I'll start with my own self, when we entered the workforce, it wasn't really available to us to decide how we would take a job based on that. It's over time that I think we're learning that those core values can be an expectation. And I really do think that is a more current thing. And I really do think that it isn't exclusively to the under 30 crowd, but they have entered the workforce with a voice for that didn't exist before. And so, Peter, I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about that a little bit, about, how are employees helping to change the culture? How do you, as an HR person, navigating that relationship with employees and getting them involved?
I think it's an approach that needs to be done from both sides. I mean, you mentioned before the purpose. I mean, the purpose needs to build a sense, why are people coming to work every day? They need to have a certain reason why to get up in the morning and do something good. I mean, here it starts already. We need not to believe that people get up in the morning believing they don't want to be something good. Everybody gets up, they want to be something constructive. Now, when we talk about culture and bringing that in line with the purpose, as I said, it goes from both sides. On one side, it comes from the organization as such, from management, leadership, giving a certain direction. That's one element. You give a certain context, a certain meaning, a certain construct. But at the same time, you need to make sure you get the voice from the employees, let me say, kind of bottom up. Huh? So we have initialized, or we have a process in place where change agents do some experiments, as we call them, in the organization, talking as a group where they have issues in collaboration, on values, where they think things should change, and then have an open dialogue. Then trust and psychological safety fall in, have an open dialogue about what they think needs to become changed or needs to be done better. And this is reflected back to management. So it's a dialogue. It's a both-way stream. Important as well is that management is aware that they are being looked at. I mean, people look at management, and you can behave 4 times right. If you do once just for a reason, not the right, that's what people will remember. So be aware, as a leader, you are in a role model situation.
Yeah, the accountability metrics are much higher. I agree with you. But I love the fact that you're engaging the voice of employees. That is something that we really think leading companies are doing, and putting people at the center and engaging their ideas to help improve business. So let's talk a little bit about places where that gets stuck or maybe a little bit difficult. Where is the friction that you're seeing in that, between the energy that employees have to want to do things and the purpose and need of the business to take the time that it takes to roll these things out? Any good friction stories and navigating those to help?
By friction, you mean that pursuing a sustainability goal would basically kind of hinder the business?
Exactly. Okay. Or maybe not hinder the business, but maybe not move as fast as the employees are anxious for it to move, or where there's a little bit of.
I think from an HR perspective, I can certainly think of the whole topic of performance management, how you're basically setting the goals in companies. So there are currently approaches, like OKR, objectives and key results, where you can And I think the topic of sustainability, as you said it, the reason why I applied back then at Kearney was also the topic sustainability, by the way. So I think, and I was below 30 by then. So I think it really arrived in the middle of the society, and it's important to people. And I think they drive it even by themselves, but you need to leave them room for it. And if you have a goal setting, for example, where you have a management setting certain goals and the things that employee would like to do, they don't fit in there. So this is certainly something that can cause friction and frustration also with employees. And I think in the worst case, they will leave and pursue their sustainability goals in another place.
But I think, friction is not always a bad thing, right? That's how you sometimes leapfrog. Okay. So I think there will always be a conflict because a lot of people will always want to go faster. I mean, if it's diversity, inclusion, I will always expect 50-50. And if it takes us 5 years, I want it to take 1 year. And if they said we can have it done in 6 months, I'd say, why isn't it done tomorrow, right? So people always want to go faster. Of course, we want to decarbonize faster. We want to move to sustainable solutions faster. We want to engage more with our communities. We want to do more and we want to go faster. And that will always be the case. And then, as a senior leader, you also have to be super pragmatic. What is actually feasible? What can we do? How can we harvest that energy and make use for good? And how do we do this? So I think it's, we all have different roles to play, right? It is the role of some people to just push and to be black and white and just say, we expect this, we want this, and just push for that. It is the role of other people to do so in a responsible way. Also any business is a business. Unless we make a profit, we have nothing to invest in communities. We have nothing to invest in our people. So for the business leaders, it's about taking that and do it in a way that works for the business as well. So I think there will always be a bit of conflict. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing.
So Peter, what about the HR's role of compliance and the conflict between the energy of people wanting to move faster and the needs of the business?
Well, at business, you want to be faster, as you just said. You want to be faster, you want to be better. But then, there's two sides. If you want to do faster, if you want to get quicker, you need an environment that people can rely on. There needs to be a level of trust in the organization, not only to the peers, as well to management. People need a certain level of safety. Psychological safety, I mentioned already before, so they can speak up. They are, open to admit that they maybe cannot do something, or that they don't know something, or they do not feel comfortable in something, so that can be addressed. This is as well what you mentioned in regards to performance management. If you do not have an open dialogue with your people going both ways, you cannot become better. And we have to become better in business. And if you want to do that, then you need an environment that enables this, that you can learn. You learn from your mistakes as well. That needs to be as well tolerated. Yeah, that needs to be tolerated as well. That sometimes mistakes happen, because if you don't go new avenues, you will never make a mistake. So I think it's that exchange that is required, an open dialogue. There needs to be as well a certain, expectation, because people are expecting that they're being challenged as well, but then have an environment and provide as well opportunities that people can become faster and do things more efficient and better.
This because this is transparency, right? And I think to some extent you don't have to be perfect. And I think perfect is really the enemy of getting stuff done. But if you're transparent, especially with your people, that's usually good enough. They want to be part of this journey. Nobody's expecting you to come with a perfect solution for them to execute. They want to be part of finding that path, finding the right solutions. Like, you make a few failures, learn a bit, right? But if you have that openness and that transparency, say, this is where we're trying to go. Will we get there? Who knows, hopefully. How will we get there? We don't know. You need to help us find our way. I think that's also a way of engaging people and making them feel like they are heard and they are part of it.
This is important. We have the unions, we have other parts. It is not against each other. It is a sense of doing it together. People have different functions, different responsibilities, different abilities, etc., and do it together to become better. Ultimately, that makes a better world, because I think all people want to be part of something that is evolving for the better of the society and the company ultimately as well.
Yeah, I think it's so important too, because as we look at the world today and in our recent macroeconomic challenges that we've been kind of navigating over the last 3 years, it is really clear that pretending that you're going to decide how that something will work and that it'll work perfectly is setting yourself up for failure, because there's going to be a lot of things outside of your control. And so engaging in those sort of cultural muscle of psychological safety, building an environment where people feel like they're contributing to solving the ideas problem as well as the execution problem, and are sort of co-creating that with you, gives you that foundation for more adaptability, more change, more resilience, which if you can see anything in the future, you can see we're going to need more of that, not less, as we progress.
This has also a lot to do with culture for me, like what kind of culture, and what Peter's saying. I really became a fan of GF over time in the last year, and I can only, not in a sustainability project, but in a large digitalization project that we have, I really experienced this culture that Peter is talking about, right? So we had a very bumpy start at a large digitalization project, because some people fell sick. That sometimes happens. It started later and was a huge team effort of like 30-40 people to make it work, right? And it was also this great spirit. Nobody was kind of angry at each other, so everyone stuck his head together. There was very strong support also from management in this thing, and it's really great to do it. And I really have to think, if you apply this also to sustainability projects, you can achieve great things, right?
Yeah. Just to add, I mean, to your question before, what I think is what we see as an organization, being an industrial organization which has a major part in production, this is still an issue. I mean, to bring, let me say, office workers into these thinkings, into these environments, is a much easier nowadays than it is with people that work shift, that are in a plant, that are in a different environment. And this is currently one of the big issues that we have. How can we bring our blue-collar workers, our people in the factory working shift, closer to these processes of evolving, of being part of a culture that is evolving and that tries to become better? Not that we are not looking for them, but it's more difficult. I mean, sometimes you have no email addresses for these, you have not the same connections. How can we bring these workers as well being fully part of that society? This is currently one of the big questions that we are pursuing.
One of the things that we're seeing as well in that, and oftentimes we think about this as deskless workers that are in a factory or maybe out in the field or whatever. The thing that I see really that gives me hope is that I see more organizations looking to not just have the people in the back office thinking through and solving problems for the people on the shop floor. Instead, they're really engaging with them and asking, what do you need? Empathizing with more clarity about what is your lived experience, what is your work experience, and how do we support that? So before we run out of time, I really want to get back to one of the things that you touched on at the beginning, which is the concept of mental health and well-being and the wholeness of each of the workers and how we can support that. Because again, if we're going to think about people in a sustainable way, we have to create conditions that they can thrive, that they can grow, that they can achieve their own potential. So I'd love to hear places that you're getting good ideas around this, or places that you are feeling inspired about how the conversation has changed around the topic of mental health, as well as some of the concrete things that you're seeing that are really working better to support workers better.
Well, I mean, the pandemic changed a lot in that regard. I think I always say maybe in 10 or whatever, 20 years, we consider that one of the moments of the years that big changes will be known. I mean, it's probably an epoch that changes will come. And I think these topics, exactly the pandemic, when society was in a difficult situation from its pure existence of being healthy as well, I think that's when many things started to happen, where people started to think about own values, about own issues. And at the same time, during the pandemic, we had more issues about caring each other, caring not only if someone was in a hospital or was ill. We did make sure, hey, stay in touch because we cannot see each other physically. So there was a clear attempt to become aware and to be aware about the necessity to care for each other. And I think that is in a way transformed as well into the nowadays world, which I hope is after pandemic nowadays. So I think we have changed. There is many things, and then obviously it's as well the generation issue that you mentioned. It is the issue of talent shortage that has an impact. There is many aspects that come now to life that we see now. And I think it's the moment that we have the chance to correct many things that probably haven't really gone well in the past. And sustainability is exactly in that direction.
But I think also maybe some of the stigma is gone. And I think the pandemic was like we were already seeing a positive trend, and then the pandemic came and it was just like, but I think the stigma around anxiety, around mental health, around different, different disabilities and things like that, slowly but surely, not as dramatic as it used to be to some extent. And it will differ between cultures and between countries, I will say. But still, I mean, today it's okay, even, in a conversation with your boss, you can say, I'm super stressed, or I have anxiety, or I'm not doing great. In many cases, but I mean, some years ago, that would be the exception. Yeah. But today you can in a different way. And I hope we continue to get better and better at that. And I think one way of doing that is as businesses to become more and more inclusive, because nothing is better than a good example. It goes for business, it goes for sustainability, and it goes for people. A good example. And there are so many good examples right now to learn from. I was at a dinner last night where a woman told me about their neurodivergent internship program. 60 people doing an internship. Huge success. So they're going to obviously scale and do more, but showing that this absolutely works and it's a super success, taking the stigma out of that. When you have 60 already in the company and then come 60 more and 60 more, the same for LGBTQ+, having those good examples, taking the stigma out. I think this is what we need, more and more inclusions, more and more different role models in businesses, more and more good examples. And that's how it'll be better and better, because then also people will understand each other better when they have people like themselves to relate to in their workplace.
What I also like is like what you said, Peter, with kind of going back with the basics and to the basics and basically delivering the basics at the basis. So what I mean with that, if you take an example from the healthcare industry, you can talk a lot about mental health and all these things, but even like the basic needs sometimes are not reflected from the nurses. So how people are currently planned for their shift, right? You have zero say in how you are planned. There is zero participation in how you are planned, right? If you kind of provide means how you can create participation, how people, and there are ways to do it already. There are ways to do it already out there, to provide a way how, for example, nurses can say, I have a child, I cannot work this or that shift. Right now that it's not possible, what happens? These people leave, then you have other people that are overworked in the hospitals, and we're at the brink of the collapse in the healthcare industries, or at least in some hospitals, right? So sometimes I think, these mental health topics and also health topics of employees, overwork and these kind of things, you can also kind of have a huge impact if you really work at the very basics, like personal planning, for example, in HR, and how people are planned for their shifts can have a huge effect on their lives, even if it's, it doesn't sound as lofty as other things, but it can have a huge effect.
And that's what we need, to treat people like people and not just another resource. It's not the same as computer software. It's not the same as desks and chairs. It's people.
Exactly.
And I do think this understanding of the wholeness of the human condition is so important. My dad worked a blue-collar job, and he never knew his schedule for the next week until Friday. So he didn't know what his schedule would be on a Sunday until the Friday before. And even if he wanted to do like a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment, he couldn't schedule it without taking a day off. So to your point, I think we've come to a place in society where we're like, does it really, is that necessary? It's not necessary. That's just the way it's been run. And it's about the power differential between what voice does an employee have in their work condition versus what does the employer have. And most of these conditions were not created with a lack of compassion. It's just a lack of awareness, a lack of empathy, a lack of curiosity. And so I think the disruption that we're seeing and the changes that we're seeing in the macro condition creates curiosity, creates new examples, and forces us to think in terms of problem solving with the individual's needs in mind. And I really feel like society is going to benefit dramatically as we continue to evolve and get better, because this is the kind of change, back to our start, that creates that sustainable condition for work, right? Where work can have a fulfilling opportunity for both the individual and the employer, and that you can get that balance in a way that helps, the overall communities.
And I think, to Peter's earlier point, just listen to the people who actually have the problems. They will tell you what the problem is, and they probably have a pretty good idea on how to solve it.
That's the point.
That's
the big point.
Yeah.
That actually people often know how to solve the issue themselves. You just need to give them a platform that they actually can speak up and call about and talk about what they have in mind. I mean, to your dad's problem, that we have already today. I mean, we just recently read that the flying staff of airline companies don't know how they're being scheduled, not even for the next month. I mean, their private life obviously is difficult to plan to invite friends for a weekend if you don't know if you're away or not. So I think it's just, and you have tools and means nowadays that you can solve that. You mentioned hospitals. I have a bit insight into the healthcare industry because my daughter works in the healthcare industry. And there is a lot of issues that I believe, why are these guys not solving that? I mean, exactly in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of hierarchical thinking. They're not listening. I mean, doctors, I don't know inside, but what I hear is permanent, that bosses, doctors are not listening to what the staff that is actually taking care of the patient is doing. If they would have an open dialogue, they could probably learn a lot from each other. Yeah. Besides other tools, it means administrative work, which is probably exaggerated, etc., etc. So just listen to each other, talk to each other, and find solutions for the benefit of everybody, not only from the individual, but as well for the customers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I like a lot what you're saying, and I'm just thinking, for that you need a huge cultural change in hospitals first, or at the same time, I don't know, it's linked with the processes obviously, but I'm thinking just of a hospital when my daughter was sick a year ago, more or less, and I brought her to a hospital not far away from here, and there was the parking spaces for the employees, which was like 500 meters away from the hospitals, and then you had like a director's entrance, director parking spaces, So already when you arrive at the hospital, there's the clear hierarchy. So you have the directors and you have the people at the bottom. You would say, like I would go away with that, right? So kind of. This hierarchical thinking, it manifests everywhere in the hospitals, and you need to get rid of that as much as possible.
But we should not stick on hospitals now.
No.
Yeah,
you're
because
right.
honestly,
you're right.
I'm not an expert in that industry. It's just some things I hear and see. But the basic thinking, what you have, is absolutely right. It's just don't give too much issues or address too much topics just on hierarchy. Just be part. Obviously, some have a bit the higher say than others, but as well, listen to each other. Be inclusive. And the inclusive then goes in many, many ways. It's not only listening, let me say, leaders to workers, it's as well, then we come to the D&I topics, that we respect each other, that we have a place for each other, and then we come back to, again, sustainability is about diversity as well. I mean, only an organization that allows a diverse workforce on the long haul, to my conviction, is going to be around. I mean, this is sustainable.
So it all comes back to culture. Again, no matter where we go, it starts with the culture.
Absolutely. So I just want to thank everyone. This idea that we are having conversations about how to engage our people to solve our biggest problems, to think sustainably, not just for our planet, but for our communities and for each of us. Because when we can all do our part, when we can all feel connected to solving problems, when we can all recognize that we have things to learn ourselves about other people, and in learning that, we can maybe solve bigger problems together. And a big theme here at Davos is collaboration, right? Collaboration outside of siloed thinking, outside of hierarchical structures, really elevating the voice of more people. I think we're going to really create the future that we all want to live and work in. So thank you so much for this wonderful panel.